If someone approached you in the street and asked who the 8th President of the United States was, would you know? Sandwiched between the better-known Andrew Jackson and the infamously short presidency of William Henry Harrison is a president whose time in office was highly influential on the blossoming political system. Some feel he was the last of the Founding Fathers, and his political career markedly impacted American politics. Yet he is largely unknown today, with his legacy being that of a mediocre president. Let's go through some of the lesser-known details of the life of Martin Van Buren. Martin was the son of a farmer and tavern owner of Dutch heritage in Kinderhook, New York. He was born on December 5, 1782, and his childhood nickname was Little Matt. Even in adulthood, he didn't get taller than 5 foot 6 inches. He grew up speaking Dutch, and as a youth, he worked in his father's tavern after school, where he was exposed to the developing world of American politics, as people like Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr would often frequent his father's tavern. By the age of 14, he became an apprentice lawyer and won his first court case just 1 year later. His interest in politics may have been sparked while working in his father's tavern. His legal education took him further into the New York political team, particularly the then-named Democratic-Republican Party. In the early 1800s, he joined Thomas Jefferson's party. Van Buren saw that the party was splitting into factions and was plagued by infighting and a lack of unity. Proving he had a natural talent for politics, he was able to unify the party in the state of New York. His unique perspective was that conflict was unavoidable, and it was better to manage it than try to stamp it out. Adhering to the philosophy, "the enemy of my enemy is my friend," Van Buren saw that solidarity within the party was the only way at defeating their opponents. Many viewed this strategy as manipulative and cynical, labeling Van Buren as a power-hungry politician. However, it seems that Van Buren's motives were not simply to secure power for himself. He believed in the political ideals of Jefferson and Jackson and used the construction of efficient and effective political organizations to promote them. His passion for this ideology inspired him in all his political actions. In 1812, he was narrowly elected to the New York Senate, remaining in this position until 1820. During this time, he was appointed the state's Attorney General, demonstrating his skill as a politician. In the early 1820s, he created a group that would run like a political machine, active on national and state levels. It effectively maintained party discipline even when not actively led. Originally called the Holy Alliance, it is more commonly known by the label created by Thurlow Weed, the Albany Regency. Martin Van Buren proved himself to be a shrewd strategist, and members of the Albany Regency gained control of party conventions where they could influence nominations, advance their friends, and use political favors to motivate people. Despite this behavior being controversial today, they were not viewed as corrupt, and Martin Van Buren fulfilled his official duties to the letter. The Albany Regency led to Van Buren being elected to the United States Senate in 1821. Van Buren then moved to Washington to reproduce his achievements in New York. He believed in the doctrine of state rights and opposed an overriding federal government. When John Quincy Adams was elected in 1824, Van Buren founded a new political party following the Jeffersonian ideology, which, before long, would be known as the Democratic Party. Van Buren was a big supporter of Andrew Jackson and concentrated his political focus on making him the next president. Just as he had done in New York, he brought Jackson's network of supporters into a cohesive political party. Van Buren used his networking skills to forge alliances and his penchant for marketing to create a newspaper that would oppose Adams' presidency. He then established a network of communities to report to state chairmen and help spread the party's message across the country. While this seems standard practice now, it was revolutionary at the time, and many of Van Buren's techniques are still employed by politicians today. In fact, Martin Van Buren essentially created America's two-party system. Van Buren proved himself to be one of Jackson's most trusted supporters and even ran for the state of New York governor to secure Jackson more votes. Thanks to Van Buren's hard work and knack for political strategy, Jackson won with a landslide victory in 1828. Van Buren resigned as the state governor to become Jackson's Secretary of State. Jackson said of Van Buren that he was a true man with no God. The unquestionable loyalty of Van Buren was in stark contrast to Vice President John C. Calhoun, who himself was a presidential aspirant and had recommended cabinet ministers who were loyal to him first and Jackson second. During the first year of the presidency, a rift formed between Jackson and his vice president, John C. Calhoun. The infighting rendered the cabinet ineffectual, so Jackson stopped holding official meetings and instead met with a group of his most trusted advisors, including Van Buren. The rival press mocked this practice, calling them the Kitchen Cabinet. This unofficial group was important throughout Jackson's first term. From 1829 to 1831, the split in government was highlighted during the Petticoat affair, in which personal disputes among the politicians' wives spilled over into politics. After reaching an impasse, Van Buren suggested that he and John Eaton, Secretary of War, and whose wife was the center of the smear campaign, should resign to encourage Calhoun and his supporters to quit too. This move would allow Jackson to reorganize his cabinet and better his chances of re-election. After resigning, Van Buren hoped to serve as minister to Great Britain, but the appointment was blocked by Calhoun, who inadvertently made him a martyr. The gambit paid off, and Van Buren was soon back serving Jackson when he was nominated for the vice presidency, replacing his old rival John C. Calhoun. In 1832, Jackson and Van Buren won by a greater margin than when Jackson was first elected and easily defeated their national Republican opponents. Due to his loyalty and political prowess, Van Buren was unanimously voted as the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party in 1836. Just as Van Buren had created the Democratic Party as a direct opposition to John Quincy Adams' presidency, a party called the Whig Party had been made to oppose Andrew Jackson. The Whig Party attempted to stop Van Buren from getting a majority by nominating 3 candidates from different regions. However, they underestimated Van Buren, who still won, receiving 50.8% of the popular vote. After the election, Van Buren became the first president who was a U.S. citizen from birth. Unfortunately, his presidency got off to a bad start when one of his first acts was to deny the admission of Texas to the Union. Texas was a slave state, and Van Buren felt that the balance of the Union would be upset if he allowed the state to join. But this decision was not particularly popular. Then, an economic depression began in 1837. Jackson had placed restrictions on state banks, which caused credit to be limited. This move triggered panic, and during 1837, many depositors started to demand a withdrawal of their money. The sudden rush to withdraw funds caused a run on banks, which led to the closure of over 300 banks, costing many people their jobs and life savings. Van Buren did not believe that the state should bail out banks, so the government decided not to help. He declared that the panic was due to the overexpansion of debt and reckless business practices, and dedicated himself to maintaining the government's solvency. Van Buren proposed that federal funds be moved to an independent treasury instead of being kept in state banks to protect deposits. This suggestion was passed by Congress in 1840, after which several conservative Democrats defected to the Whig Party. Van Buren's presidency was also affected by the ongoing and costly Second Seminole War, in which American forces tried to remove the Seminole people from their homelands in Florida. Van Buren's time in office was not all disaster, and he did manage to broker peace between Maine and British Canada over border disputes regarding the Aroostook River. He dispatched General Winfield Scott, who successfully negotiated the WEBSTER-Ashburton Treaty of 1842. He also secured a 10-hour-per-day limit for federal employees who worked manual labor. A little-known fact about Van Buren is that since his wife had passed and he had not remarried, his daughter-in-law, Angelica Singleton, performed First Lady duties soon after his marriage to Van Buren's son, Abraham. Unfortunately for Van Buren, in the economic cycle of boom and bust, his presidency fell into the bust period. No amount of political wizardry would secure him a second term, and in 1840, the Whig candidate defeated him by 234 to 60 electoral votes. But this defeat did not put him off politics. He continued to advocate what he felt was right, and his persistent opposition to bringing Texas into the Union cost him his future candidacy with the Democrats. In 1848, he ran as a candidate for the Free Soil Party, whose main platform was opposing the extension of slavery into the West. Called the Free Soil Party after their slogan of free soil, free speech, free labor, and free men. They attracted votes from many people who did not like the idea of black laborers, whether enslaved or as free men, competing with them for work. While Van Buren never got re-elected, he weakened the Democratic candidate, contributing to the election of the Whig candidate, General Zachary Taylor. After this defeat, Van Buren decided to retire to his hometown of Kinderhook. However, he stayed active in the political world and served as a presidential elector for Franklin Pierce in 1853 and James Buchanan in 1857. By all accounts, he enjoyed his retirement, purchasing the Van Ness estate just outside of Kinderhook in 1839. He took up farming and remained at the estate, renamed Lindenwald, until he died in 1862, age 79. At the time, everyone had an opinion of Van Buren, and he seemed to elicit many different reactions. In some areas, he was one of the most hated men in the country. Many criticized him for being a career politician and his handling of the Panic of 1837. Modern historians often view his political career separately from his time as president. He was a man of many nicknames, the most famous being the Little Magician due to his ability to create political machines and shrewd maneuvering. His supporters knew him as the Careful Dutchman, American Talleyrand, and the Enchanter. His opponents were less kind, viewing his political dealings as sly and labeling him the Red Fox of Kinderhook, and, after his failed presidency, Martin Van Buren. Whatever people feel about him as president, his foray into politics had a marked impact on America. If you know any interesting facts about Martin Van Buren, please let us know in the comments below. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Martin Van Buren, check out our book, Martin Van Buren, A Captivating Guide to the Man Who Served as the 8th President of the United States. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.